Hi, I'm WTOP Entertainment Editor Jason Fraley with
Rachel Nania.
and
George Wallace.
of course,
We just call him Presto.
Dave Preston. Now, these are four of the biggest Seinfeld fans in the newsroom, and we wanted to come together because today marks the 20th anniversary of the finale. It was May 14th, 1998. Hard to believe because
a day we'd like to forget, probably.
a
Right?
day that lives in infamy.
I was 3.
Oh, no way. Get out of here.
I was a little
No
older
way.
than 3.
I was
Wow.
14, yeah. No, I remember we watched most of it live as a family. And what are you guys' thoughts on the finale itself? It was kind of polarizing when it came out.
It was. There was too much pressure on the finale.
Like, no matter what they
No matter
done.
what they did, you had to live up to all this, and there was too much pressure on. I think no matter what the finale was, it wasn't going to be something we talked about forever. And we're talking about it for the wrong reasons, I think.
It was nice to see all the stories come back, though, and be like, oh, yeah,
That was fun.
happened. That
Yeah.
happened. But then, yeah.
Those who don't remember, the four characters go to trial, and everyone comes back to testify against them, and they end up in jail, which I thought was kind of a genius way to do a reunion show, to bring back all the minor characters.
Is your last day of high school, is that the best day of high school? No, but
No.
you've got the yearbook in front of you, and I think that's what the show served, that the Seinfeld finale served to me was, oh, you're leafing through the yearbook. Oh, remember freshman year, remember this guy, that guy.
Yeah.
And so it served as, was it the best episode? No. Was it absolutely horrible? No. I mean, we've seen a lot worse, but short of the Korean War ending, you're not going to have an absolutely fantastic series finale.
Of MASH, of course. But what I would say is, even more than the episode, the scripted episode, was the clip packages were amazing they did.
Right.
And we will remember, actually, that a lot of people don't remember. That was the first time the world heard Green Day's Time of Your Life. Everyone played it in graduations after that. But this was, Jerry had the foresight and set it to the empty apartment and the empty coffee shop. And it was kind of a tearjerker. Not to mention all the great clip shows that made you want to go back and say, oh, I want to see Man Hands. I want to see the Two-Face. Like, if you had missed any of them along the way, it made you want to double time it in syndication and live.
And there aren't many clip shows that you could say as you're watching it and you knew every single one that came on.
Part of the power of Seinfeld was that each show was like little drops of rain in the ocean, so to speak. And when you saw Man Hands, when you saw, I'm Keith Hernandez, that pulled you into that whole half hour or hour. And for a show that was basically, as they said, about nothing, there were a lot of somethings, a lot of moments, a lot of shared experiences between those characters that made the show better than a lot of standard sitcoms of that era, and today too.
And it's something I said in today's tribute piece for the anniversary,
Which is phenomenal, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
It's real and spectacular.
Oh yeah, and we interviewed Kenny Bania for it, so it's gold, Jerry, gold. No, that's one of it was a great
It's
point.
a funny word.
Gold,
Ovaltine.
Ovaltine.
Why not round team? The jar is round, the can is round.
He's a time slot. What is it? Time slot?
Yeah,
Yeah, time slot success.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
But-
this right
but
now.
What I was going to say was that what you mentioned is legit. That it's called a show about nothing, and that of course that's what they pitch to NBC in the most self-reflexive show. They actually go and pitch a show about nothing.
Right.
I think we have something here.
Yes.
But actually, like you said, I think it's a show about everything. It drills down on and that's why I think it holds up. It goes into every
Concerns, and Elaine put it on during the Bizarro Jerry episode when she said, I can't hang out here and deal with all of your mundane observations about tired minutia. But what do we do during our normal days of work and life? We think about the mundane, we traffic, we're just, working here, the coffee machine, Major Dickinson. Why is he a major on our coffee machine and not a colonel? He's been here long enough to
You're
earn
a
a
Perrier
promotion.
guy.
I know.
You can't get
You're a Perrier gal.
You can't get the Twix out of the candy bar machine.
Yeah.
I mean, I think everybody can sit down and watch that show, and you can relate. Something that in that half hour has happened to you within the last week. That's the way I looked at it.
My come to heaven moment on Seinfeld was the episode where Jerry and Elaine both fly, and he flies first class, she flies coach. My dad was an airline pilot. And we would fly non-revenue is what they called it. You had to dress up in a suit because you didn't know. Maybe they'd fit you in first class. Maybe they'd put you in coach. And at my memories as a kid, flying first class versus coach, that was spot on. And it was just, I called up my mom and I was like, you would not believe. She's like, yeah, I'm watching. That was so our experiences and how we live.
Now here's the thing. We were into it. I didn't watch it right from the very, very beginning. Got into it a little bit
around
later.
4 or 5, I think.
But then obviously was hooked. But for Rachel, who is a later. How do we put it?
You call her a
years ago.
reruns? A rerun
Rerun.
A maternity leave binge watcher.
But was hooked later in life and hooked on it.
Yes.
Explain
Right?
that process, because
Yeah.
you were maternity leave, right?
Yes, maternity leave, and things get a little lonely, things get a little boring, especially at 2 a.m. when someone is up every hour. So I watched Seinfeld, binged Seinfeld. Well, my husband did it with me as well. So
You'd seen episodes.
I'd
but
seen
yeah.
it here and there
The
on
couple that
TBS.
watches Seinfeld together
Right.
makes a lot of idiotic observations together.
Seinfeld to save
And
the
plus,
friendship.
she had to deal with us talking about it every
Yeah.
single day.
Right, so
Not that there's anything wrong with
No.
it.
We
Now
come
you're
in
doing
the newsroom and go,
it.
hello! La, la, la.
no, it was great. He'd watched it forever, been a longtime fan. I finally did it with him, and then all of a sudden I started catching on to little things that you guys were saying and being like, oh, Seinfeld reference.
Like, do you have
now
an-
I get
Do
it.
you have an
get it.
example? Like the Drake. Love the Drake.
I do love the Drake.
I
mean,
like the
other day-
Drakette, but I don't like the Drake. I don't know what my problem is.
Even the other day, I had on a white blouse and it had some, puffy
Yeah.
sleeves. I don't want to wear.
I don't want to be a pirate.
Oh, hoy, matey.
Or be the pirate. Yeah. so-
Literally, the other day I was at an event at the Kennedy Center, and they had the little black and white cookie, and it was like, Jerry, remember, look to the cookie, Elaine.
Look to the cookie.
Harmony in
Yeah.
Black
America.
and white, not getting along.
But
I can't see a chocolate babka without thinking about the
babka.
babka.
do you guys have a favorite
That's the
episode?
thing. No, you can't.
List a couple.
Well, because he put this really hard homework. I haven't had a homework assignment like that in a long time. It was
pretty good.
to
I did
give
math,
your
too.
favorite and your favorite quote. There are a lot of favorites. I went with the voice
Hello.
intern and more not necessarily with the voice, but because of Darren, the intern.
So
And Kramer's
Kramer
apartment,
hires an
which-
intern for his everyday life.
Kramer's apartment, which may or may not contain a chicken. That is one of my favorite episodes.
Because the intern will fly in and say, hey, Kramer says hi, buddy.
Yeah.
And take it.
There's going to be 3 for lunch.
And
4 for lunch.
to me, what also makes that great is, yes, the Kramerica Industries, the intern, but the concept that they're all doing this voice, this inside joke, and Jerry has to choose between
Voice.
the inside joke and the girlfriend.
And the girlfriend.
And his choice, of course, he goes,
voice.
hello
Yeah,
to her
the
to
voice.
close the door. That sums up the series to me,
Totally.
really. I mean, it was all about their relationship problems, and he was never happy with anyone, except for the one girl that, I guess, reminded him of himself. And he says, all this time, I've realized what I wanted. Me. And now I've swept these off my feet.
And then she drives him nuts, though. He's like,
Who
I
was the
don't like
actress?
myself.
Who was it? Who was the
Janine
actress?
Garofalo.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, you could go through the list. Kristen
Serial,
Davis,
yeah.
Courtney Cox, Terry
Great
Hatcher.
casting on that show from the standpoint of they had to create a lot of bit characters because Seinfeld was such a multi-tiered show, lots of different plots that you had to create these memorable characters, and they had to be able to stick their landings quickly. I think whether it's some of them came back for callbacks, whether it was Banya, Putty was a guy who was probably a one-off who
Yeah.
Was there for a long time, but
The 8-ball.
from
Yeah,
exactly.
all
signs
Crazy
point to
Joe
yes.
Davola from the whole the Kenny Rogers roaster, the guy that Jerry knew from way back when.
That's not going to be good for business.
The guy who called Jerry a phony and wound up getting his thumbs broken. The show did, and you look at Jerry and Seinfeld in real life and Larry David really as the creative force behind the show and really knocking it out of the park by getting these, whether they were bit characters or whether they were characters who deserved longer time on the stage, like a Newman that you were always excited to see, but he didn't outlast his welcome like a lot of bit characters who do that on other shows.
Sure.
Yeah. And speaking of, you mentioned Larry David and the writing team. To me, the genius part of it was, yes, every now and then they'd mess with the form with a backwards episode or an opposite episode, bizarro. But to me was the consistent week to week that we would introduce 4 seemingly unrelated storylines, and by then they'd all tie it together. And to me, the ultimate example of that's the marine biologist, right?
Oh. That was
George,
one of my favorite moments.
Yeah.
In that.
Explain it. George is pretending to be a marine biologist.
Jerry runs into a woman on the street who asks about George, and Jerry tells her that he's doing great. He's a marine biologist because he's always wanted to be a marine biologist. And George goes nuts saying, why would you ask? Why couldn't you say an architect? Because that's what George really
Art
wanted.
Vandal.
Or Vandalay,
Right.
Yeah.
So he ends up walking on the beach, and there's a whale that's in trouble in the ocean, and someone screams, anybody here a marine
Is
biologist?
anyone a marine biologist?
And George goes into the ocean and pulls out a Titleist, which was
golf
what's the line? What was the line? I noticed that he was when he says I was face to face with the big fish, man, whatever.
See, he was angry that day.
So and Kramer is hitting golf balls on the beach. George pulls out a Titleist and eventually saves the whale's life. and it's a golf ball that Kramer seemed to have hit into the ocean.
And he recounts the whole story.
The whole story.
And Kramer's like, "Is that a Titleist?"
That was
hole
one of
in
my
one.
favorite moments.
Right in the blow.
I think so.
Or Vandalay Industries, you know, and you want to be my latex salesman. A lot of those great things were because they set up so many storylines that wound up coming together in the end of the show.
I mean, really, you know, slow burn episodes to just, you know, again, setting up the payoff. What I think makes George Costanza and Jason Alexander lying on the floor of Jerry's apartment in his underwear shouting Vandalay Industries is the setup of the whole of the previous 20 minutes and the payoff. And I think they really did a good job. And why wouldn't that be a surprise? Because Jerry Seinfeld's stand-up comic, where you're constantly working on setup and payoff, and that show, you know, delivered a lot of setups and a lot of payoffs. So what was also, I think, kind of neat is it's about interaction and about how these characters are, you know, they're not doing a lot of things, but they're always interacting, they're always commenting, and so it, you know, really kind of speaks to the human experience like that.
I think.
They took a board game on the metro, on the subway one time.
Oh yeah, we've all complained about how Risk. We love the game, but it takes forever to play, right? And so you literally play over days and days. So Kramer and Newman have this epic battle going on. What's the Jerry says? A game of world domination played by two men who can barely run their own lives.
And they didn't trust leaving it in Jerry's apartment for the other person to come in. So Kramer takes the board game on the subway.
Oh, it's so great. And then the guy from the Ukraine gets offended and crashes the board.
Yeah.
But
that's right.
So great. I think one of the more underrated episodes.
Week.
One of the more underrated episodes was The Switch, where Jerry comes back to George one day at the coffee shop and says, "Man, I really like this girl, but I like the roommate better." And he's like, "I suggest you forget it. No one in human history has accomplished the switch." And so they like sit and try to figure it out. And he's like, "I've got it."
He comes in, barges back in the
says,
apartment.
"You suggest a menage a trois with the roommate. The girlmuffs will be offended."
Earmuffs, kids.
Yeah,
watching out there.
earmuffs.
Earmuffs.
But the whole thing, he's like, "That's brilliant. I think it'll work." But then the twist is that she's into it.
The roommate's
not an orgiast.
Yeah, and George is like, "This is amazing." He's like, "I'm not going through this. I'm not an orgy guy."
He says, "I need to get orgy friends."
Yeah. Speaking of which, it dealt a lot with. Let's talk about how it was ahead of the time on a lot of sexual issues. I mean, Master of Your Domain. Larry David won an Emmy writing an episode all about where they make a pact, the contest.
That George cheated on, we learned.
Yeah, to see who could go the longest without pleasuring themselves. And they never use the M word. That's the genius. It's always, "Are you still Master of Your Domain?"
He did mention his mom in the first, because she caught him.
Yeah, but then the word itself. Or Spongeworthy, or They're Real, They're Spectacular, or my name rhymes with a part of the female anatomy.
That's right.
Mulva.
It's almost like we're at
Dolores!
the diner here at Monk's. You know what? What? Newman's sick. Newman's hurt.
about Newman?
Gotta go and do sports.
He's got to go do
you hear
sports.
about
We'll
Newman?
keep the conversation going. Did you hear about Preston?
But no, you're right about that as far as being ahead of the time, because it's things that, you know, but it's like issues that, not issues, but things that will come up and you're that everybody has kind of, it's happened to you.
Yeah.
I mean, that just like for me, one of the other favorite ones is when Putty's selling him the car. Like you go into a car dealership and you're dealing with all these little things. I mean, that happens.
Right, everyday stuff.
Now, I've never had a car salesman offer me a high five before. High five. You owe me 5. But things like that. And one of the other things that you have to say about the show is that when a lot of the fun part about now is when we were talking about all these best of, and we were talking about the favorite episodes and favorite quotes and things like that, is that when you think of one thing and then you think of the other 3 stories in that episode.
Right,
I
right.
forgot that was with this and
Right.
that was with that. That's what's so good about it. Because there's 4 great storylines a lot of times.
Yeah.
Well, and I was telling Jason too beforehand. Hi. That I think Elaine's character really set the stage for a lot of future female characters in sitcoms and even in other shows like Sex and the City. I mean, she's working in the city, she's single, dating around, has these group of guy friends that you never see her surrounded by like too many females. In fact, she gets weirded out at things like baby showers and things like that.
Right. You got to see the baby.
Yeah. I just think, she was really a turning character in female roles.
Did you like her dance moves?
Oh, well, I mean, it's kind of my dance.
What do you think she does? What do you think she does at parties?
Too many bad things
Have
about
you seen
it.
her at parties?
Oh, yeah.
After a few cocktails.
But you're right. What a I mean, now after Veep and all the Emmys, everyone holds her up as today's Lucille Ball or Carol Burnett. But like, seriously, one of the most genius actresses of our time. And I think you're right. She was sort of in that time where she was holding her own. And for instance, the idea that a woman would fake an orgasm. She has the power in that scene. She's like fake, 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 and the guys are just blown away.
Yeah, and look how many other shows and other characters have tackled those topics since then. Like, I think she really paved the way for that.
I think she was ahead of the game on a lot of it.
Oh, no question.
Do you have a favorite character? So, again, sorry, it's impossible.
No, yeah, it's impossible. I mean, for mine, one of them I put, the main. You like all the main characters. I don't have a ranking of them, but Kramer obviously is a big part. I loved Kramer, and I think because of the unknown with him, you never know what he's doing. We didn't know his first name until season 6. Like, that's funny.
Yeah.
I thought that was great, and then you always wondered what his. I think the. Did I hear this right? That every time when he would come into the apartment and they would start applauding,
like flying through the door,
people got upset at that. Is that true? Did I hear that?
I'm not really sure.
Really? Because people just loved him so much.
Yeah, they started applauding every time he came in. And they eventually had to say, "Don't do that."
Oh,
did I make that up?
Maybe.
Did I make that up?
I mean, they do applaud every time he comes in. I don't remember them stopping, though.
Or, like, occasionally the door would be locked and you'd hear him bang into it or something.
Come on,
hey, he's back. Hey, welcome to the set of the Merv Griffin show.
Yeah, thanks for not recasting me with Mike Farrell during my absence.
We already have a George.
We already have a George. We were talking about who our favorite character might be. I know Rachel loves Elaine. And
I love Elaine.
I'm a Kramer guy, but I mean,
I'd say during the live run, it was everyone loved Kramer because it was over the top, right?
He was kind of a little wacky,
And then I started watching it more, in syndication and on DVDs. I love how strategically lazy George is.
Yeah.
He's so lazy. He works harder to come up with a way to do less.
Like
take
taking
it easy way
on
out.
smoking to try and break off his engagement.
Who hasn't done that, by the way?
I know. Let ye judge. No.
But also George's parents. Anybody else huge fans?
Frank.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, Festivus.
Frank Costanza was a close second for Putty for me as far as
I think that's my favorite.
I like them. I found Frank to get a little annoying, like in the latter. If I had one thing that I didn't enjoy the latter couple seasons, Frank was great in limited doses, but they seemed to trot him out a lot the last season.
They may have forced it a little bit.
Jerry's parents, meanwhile, did they ever make me say, "Oh wow, I hope we get to see Jerry's mom and dad on another episode"? No, but they were pleasantly surprising in a lot of their episodes, from the Man's-ear to various and sundry other things.
Oh, the bro. I forgot all about
Man's-ear.
But remember the Jerry's father was a different character in the first in the pilot.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
So there was a different actor who played Frank Costanza in it was the wheelchair episode.
Oh, yeah.
And they recast the role with
Jerry Stiller.
Jerry Stiller.
Ben's dad.
Yes. And so they recast him, and then they went back and reshot the scenes for syndication from the wheelchair episode.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Any Curb fans in here? Do you guys?
Oh,
have
yeah.
Yes, of course.
So one of my favorite things has been going back and trying to find all of the Larry David cameos or voices, because you'll hear him occasionally shout from the side.
Oh, yeah.
He's
George Steinbrenner. Yeah. And George is basically based on Larry David's whole truth. And they did a Seinfeld reunion on Curb. Remember? The characters all came back in.
That's
right.
Okay.
That was the closest we got to a reunion.
Sadly.
Well, we could do this all day.
They could do a reboot
obviously.
in
We
life.
could talk about nothing all day.
We could do this all day, but we
Do
do
you
it
have
all
any
day.
idea how much
any
time
day,
I
right?
spend in this apartment? I can ballpark it.
Yeah, we can ballpark it. But I guess just in closing, it's hard to believe it's 20 years, bringing it full circle.
It is.
It almost...
Did you watch the finale live?
Yeah,
Yes.
of course. Oh, yeah, I'd
In real
watch probably
time.
the final 4 or 5 seasons of it, and then we would go back and do the syndication.
You know what I
and then
wish they had done? I wish they had done an episode where they expanded on the Bizarro World, Jerry thing, where they did like it was going to be like an hour-long show where the first 15 minutes they're in like normal world, and then you see the squiggly lines, and they're all in Bizarro World, and Elaine's in there. They have a madcap adventure, and then she comes back for the final 15 minutes, and all is normal again. Be kind of cool. They could do it black and white and color like the Wizard of Oz.
Hello means
like
goodbye, or what?
At least we got the one Bizarro. Yes, we could do it all day. Do you guys think it'll be? How long do you think it'll be around? Because because it's in syndication every day on TBS, it doesn't feel like it's been 20 years. It doesn't feel off the air at all.
No, it doesn't.
And it doesn't feel tired either.
No.
Friends is on all the time, and it feels tired.
I love Friends. I just don't like how they started
It
dating
dates
each
a
other
little,
at the
yeah.
end of the series, or Happy Days Jumped the Shark.
The dumbing
Office
down of
went on
Joey.
like 3 years after Michael Scott left. Seinfeld left on top.
Right.
9 seasons.
It could have, and they could have milked out another year or two, and it wouldn't have been that bad. But choosing to leave the way they did, they like the episode where Jerry's like, "Hey, you've been great. I'm out.
I'll leave on top." Absolutely.
Yeah, and they did.
Do you think we'll see any sort of reunion?
I don't. I mean, I think they already did it on Curb. I don't think it doesn't seem like in his.
No.
That right? It doesn't seem
and
his style.
I don't think they'll ever get to a point where they need money, where they need to do something.
Yeah.
And Jerry's had a few people on, comedians in cars getting
which
coffee.
is
That's
funny.
always good to catch up on. But,
Right.
Yeah.
But I think no matter what they did,
all the cast members went on there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think if they decided to do it, no matter what they did, I think it would be just like that. Well, just like the Super Bowl commercial. Remember Gene and George, which was part of that reunion.
Right.
They sit down, I mean, that's just people would love to see it.
You
But you're right.
availed yourself.
But I think you're right that it doesn't feel like it's been gone because it's on all the time, so people aren't wanting.
Yeah.
And with a couple
I
of
would love to see a
minor,
reunion.
there are a couple of minor
I would love to see a
things
reunion.
here and there that date the show, like the Schindler's List episode.
Right.
The
movie phone. Why don't you just tell me the name? Like you wouldn't dial a phone.
It's
still funny.
There are a few things that make it not 21st century, but it's still a show about interaction, a show about worries, a show about finding the amusing in the miserable and the sublime and the ridiculous. And so, I mean, it's a show that when it's on, gotta love the sign.
Oh, yeah.
Love the sign.
It gave us, I guess, to wrap it up, it gave us a sign language. SEIN
wow.
language.
Wow. You did there?
You know what we said about getting out on top? I don't think we did
That's it. I'm out of here. The jerk store con. They're running out of meat.
There you go.
Thanks so much for doing this, guys.
Hey,
any final
thanks for having us.
sign-offs? Anybody?
I'm out there.
I'm out there, Jerry, and I'm loving every minute of it.
I like that. She gets the
That's
last
not
word.
going to be good
She
for
gets
business.
the last
That's not
word.
going to be good for anybody. Thanks.